All right, everybody, thank you so much for your patience. So we are getting started. Today has actually been an amazing day. We've been here since 9 a.m. We made progress today, people. We weren't just talking. We brought brilliant minds together to actually take action around climate change and sustainability, and with a real interest of how artificial intelligence can really help save our Earth. Whether you understand AI or even interested or working within sustainability, climate change, this is an event for you. There's lots of different opportunities here right now for you to really understand how new technologies can really help progress and really improve our lives and improve our planet. And so that is why we all are here today for our first annual AI Earth Summit. Now, all day we had about 100 people come out with 8 different breakout sessions focusing on everything from climate change, biodiversity, clean water, healthy oceans, water security, sustainable mobility, weather and disaster resilience, and if I'm missing something, environmental injustice, obviously. And so it was beautiful because everyone came together over 4 hours. We did a presentation at the very end. It's all live streamed, it's all recorded for later if you didn't get to see it. But we all came together, we actually did some stuff. And now tonight, after a nice, long evening with a little bit of food and a little bit of libation, we are gonna have an amazing panel where we had to have 2 top professors from USC, Annie Lipkis from Tree People, and Matt from XPRIZE's Ocean Initiative, come together to have a great conversation with Tia, as moderating. This amazing conversation where we really get to bring people from the ocean, people from the land, and people focusing on the engineering and the AI aspects to see what we can really discuss over 16 minutes with an amazing 30 minutes of Q&A from you. So without further ado, I'd love to hand it off to Tia for the next part of this evening. So everyone, Tia.
Hi everyone, how you doing? Thank you very much for coming. It's actually the first panel I've ever moderated in LA, so it's really nice to see the LA crowd. So my background is in economics and environmental economics, and I started an architectural practice, so obviously, 11 years ago, and I really started to understand some of the challenges in sustainability, but from a practical city design, development, and build out. And then, of course, naturally, if you're working with cities, there's a lot of data, and data means a huge amount of technology that is used to compute that data and understand where that data is leading. And so a number of questions come up. I mean, the first one, I think my university professor was like, is your data going bad? Like, what's the time frame for using that data? What kind of sensors are important to sense your city, to understand what's happening real time? How are you making decisions on really big questions related to, say, traffic movement around the city, and how that city sort of both aligns and upgrades to current challenges, whether it is natural disasters that occur, and also a number of different factors that affect the lifestyle of people in cities. But all along this time, one of the big questions that kept on coming up was, why? Why are we designing cities the way that we are? Why are we designing economies the way that we are? And if this is leading to larger questions surrounding sustainability, then how can we be further aligned with not just the Sustainable Development Goals, and the CSR that happens with that, but actually as a forethought before we go ahead and design our products and services and businesses. Before we think about, creating the next billion-dollar company, are we thinking of the environmental and social impact that it has? So a lot of those questions have led me to a philosophy called replenishing the planet, replenish Earth. And so how do you replenish the planet? Well, firstly, It's as simple as, is this product or service a compostable service? If you've got something in your hands right now, is that something that returns to the earth, and how does it do that? How much time does it need to do that? So replenishing the planet is really about this manifesto and a philosophy. And if you were to look at capital economics, or what I like to call the waste economy, it is a structure based on a philosophy that has done extremely well. But if we were to go and shift that to an ecosystem, then you won't go to the forest and find a black bag sitting outside with the forest saying, do you think you can collect that on Thursday morning? So how do you create a whole structure, a wholesome structure? And so Replenish is really about the philosophy upon which you then design a structure, a system, and that ecosystem becomes aligned with one of the oldest human behaviors of all time, and that is trade. So if you were to go back to the Greek agora, you had panics where that discussion existed, the temple where people talked about where they went after life. But the agora is the market where trade existed, kind of like the khans and the caravanserais in Syria. So there's that market, but above that are the products, or the materialization of that philosophy into the trade, but into a structure. So this is where it leads to the cities that we design. So these products and services are fantastic, and I think that a number of questions exist today. What are the protocols for which we design a consensus to make decisions on the future of the global commons, for example? Somebody mentioned Eleanor Ostrom today, where she talks about the tragedy of the commons. And I think a number of questions relate to these global communal spaces. And of course, we've got a number of different emerging technologies, or what one would call the fourth industrial revolution. And these sorts of technologies like blockchain or AI or robotics are fantastic, with a hint of bias that currently exists from a humanist perspective. But of course, that evolves over time. And so I'm going to invite these brilliant people, if I may, to join me. And if I can just have a little bit of silence at the back, that would be awesome. So please join me. Bistra Dilkina, Andy Lipkis, Matthew Mulrennan, and Kelly Sanders. We've got about a 5-minute presentation per person, and then we're all going to take a seat, and each person who's giving a presentation will be standing up. Would you like us to move out of the way? Or are you okay with us sitting here? You okay with that? Okay, fine. Fantastic. So, Kelly Sanders.
Great. Hello, everybody. My name is Kelly Sanders, and I'm not going to give you so much of a presentation, but I'm just going to introduce who I am, why I think I'm here, and what my excitement is in this field. So, again, my name is Kelly Sanders. I'm an assistant professor of civil and environmental engineering at the University of Southern California, so I apologize to all of the UCLA graduates in the room. During this presentation, during this panel, I'm going to be taking credit for a lot of work, so I just want to state very upfront that I didn't actually do all of this work. This is work that has been done by my brilliant PhD students that are in the front of the room. So they are really the brilliant...
Stand up.
Thank you. Yeah, stand up. Come on, guys.
They're a little bit shy.
Okay, they're a little bit shy. I torture them enough on a daily basis. But we work really hard at USC, and we work really hard to solve environmental problems. So I told you I'm an environmental engineer, and I'm a little bit unconventional. So I come from a mechanical engineering background, and my role there is to really understand how environmental systems interact, or how human systems interact with the environment. So most of my expertise is in this area called the energy-water nexus. So in Los Angeles, for example, if you're drinking some tap water, 90% of all of the water that you're drinking in that volume of water was pumped here hundreds of miles away. And so pumping that water has a huge energy penalty, and that energy penalty has a big environmental penalty. So I try to understand that tension. On the other side of the nexus, our energy systems actually require a lot of water for energy production, for electricity generation, and that type of thing. So there's this tight tension between energy and water that really fascinates me, because when you conserve a unit of water, you're also conserving all of the energy embedded in that water. Does that make sense? This is like a little bit of a lecture. But that's really what we look at. We try to understand how these human systems interact with the environment. So why am I here on a panel about artificial intelligence? Well, I don't actually use artificial intelligence yet. That's why I want to meet all of you. You could say that I'm a little AI curious. And now all of my PhD students are horrified. I can see it on their faces. See, yeah, you could see their faces right now. They're very embarrassed that they're associated with me. But I'm excited about AI because AI is scalable. So if you think about the historical nature of our environmental problems, environmental engineering, the discipline of environmental engineering, was started in the 70s with the formation of the Environmental Protection Agency. And at that point, we were worried about local and regional water quality problems. That's why the EPA was created. Then we realized we could also fix air problems. Now we're talking about the degradation of the oceans. We're talking about the global changing of the climate. These issues are now global. And the problem is our traditional engineering solutions are not scalable. And so that's why I'm really interested in algorithms. So we do use big data sets in our research, but I'm really interested in how these algorithms, these scalable solutions, can be used to leverage and solve these global environmental problems. So I'm going to give you one little snippet of some of our work at USC, and then I'm going to pass it off to our next panelist, but feel free to interact with me. Again, I want to use your technologies. I want to use your expertise to solve some of the things that I'm interested in. So here is a map that you can't see that well from the back, but this is a map of LA County. And so what we've been doing at USC is we got smart meter records from 200,000 electricity consumers across the LA basin. So we got yearly, hourly data. So that is 8,760 hourly data points over 2 years per household for 200,000 residents. And don't worry, everything's been scrubbed, everything's been anonymized, so we can't tell who you are and how you used your electricity. But from that, we were able to merge those electricity data records with climate data to try to understand how our residential electricity use changes as a function of changes in temperature. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to identify which households have access to AC right now and which households don't. And that seems like a very rudimentary data point to understand, but we actually don't have data on who has AC and who doesn't. And why we're interested in this is from an environmental justice standpoint. So if you can see this map, you see that some of the census tracts that we've identified are circled or outlined in yellow. Those are communities that are both predominantly poor and predominantly don't have air conditioning. And what you see in the color gradations are the number of extreme heat days that we are going to be expecting come the end of the century, which seems like it's forever away, but it's almost 2020. And you can see that in the darkest color, we're expecting those are over 200 days per year. These are days over 95 degrees. So there are very few communities in Los Angeles that will have less than 30 or so hot days per year, extreme days per year. So what we want to do with these huge data sets is really target communities that are going to be vulnerable to these heat events so we can incentivize things like weatherization, really incentivize those benefits so that we can help them. And this is some of the tools that these big data sets have allowed us. So those are some of the things that are exciting to me right now. And I want to pass it off to our next panelist, but feel free to ask me questions throughout.
Thank you. Thanks, Kelly.
Hello. Hi, everybody. My name is Bistra Dilkina. I am an assistant professor at USC in computer science. And so I'm actually really working in AI. That's my field of PhD and research. And so why I'm here is because I'm actually one of a growing body of computer science researchers that are really interested in trying to harness computational power of AI to really answer some of the most pressing questions for environmental sustainability, but also social good overall. So at USC, actually, there is a center called USC Center for AI and Society, where I'm an associate director, and there we're really trying to bring experts from both computer science, in particular AI, together with domain experts from social work and from environmental sciences, etc., and try to create these connections which will allow us to understand where the opportunities and gaps where computational techniques can really help inform decision-making and predictive analytics for those fields. So in particular, what happens is that for environmental sustainability as well as many other domains, we have to make very important decisions with very limited resources, right? So it becomes very important for us to have the best practices, the best techniques at our fingertips to make use of these limited resources. And that's where AI can help. In particular, there is two parts of AI that are really informative. One is predictive analytics, basically methods from machine learning that allow us to take historic data and create models that allow us to extrapolate to areas where we don't have information or into the future. And then there's prescriptive analytics, which are basically algorithms that allow us to make decisions about how to allocate resources in the context of constraints and competing objectives. And so those two parts of AI are both critical at informing environmental sustainability. So in my work and in the center overall, we have several different domains in which we believe we have made an impact and hope to continue to do so. One of the biggest areas of interest for me personally is actually biodiversity conservation. So most likely, most of you are aware that we are in times where habitat degradation and species extinction rates are just increasing with unprecedented speed. And so now is the time for action. But at the same time, we have very limited, again, resources to do anything. So how can we help agencies and nonprofits that are working in this space to do so? So one of the key projects that USC is doing is actually helping protected areas stop wildlife poaching. So, for example, in Africa, every year, 8% of the elephant population is being lost. And at the same time, 84% of this elephant population is actually in protected areas. And what's happening is that poachers are actually going to these protected areas, setting traps and killing these animals for their ivory. So what does AI have to do with poaching, you would ask, right? Well, there's actually a lot of historic data about what are park rangers doing in order to try to protect these areas. They have GPS devices that records where they have been, where they have patrolled, what they have found. And so far, this data is being used more in a retrospective sense, looking at statistics of where did we go last year, what happened, where was the poaching mostly done. But instead, what we can do with AI is use this historic data to build predictive models that help us tell them in the next month, in the next 3 months, where do we expect the most poaching to happen? Build predictive models of poaching activity. And then feed those predictive models into the prescriptive models that AI can bring is, well, now that I have this poaching model, where do I send my park rangers? Often you have thousands of square kilometers of protected areas and only maybe 5 or 6 teams of rangers that can go out. So you have, again, very limited resources, and with AI, you can use techniques to basically create patrols that are most likely to be in areas where poaching will be prevented. So there's an emergency somewhere. So other areas in which similar techniques can come to bear are, for example, planning for resilient infrastructure. where we are again trying to decide, for example, where can we upgrade roads in order to protect our mobility in case of disaster. And again, here you have to decide how to target your investments in order to have the best impact on the social benefit. Am I running out of time, or can I?
I think you're
Yep.
okay.
So I want to share one last example of how we are using AI in our center. Is actually we are working with a non-profit organization in India called 99 Dots, and together with a startup called Everwell, which are basically working to try to improve the TB prevention in India. So that's a huge problem where there's millions of cases of TB cases right now, and the mortality rate due to it is also very high. And so what they have created is actually a system where people that are taking pills to cure TB are able to call every day. Every time they take the pill, there's a little number on the back of the pill that they can call and record the fact that they took that pill. And then these organizations can track who is actually doing well with taking their pills and who is not. And when they're not, they can actually send health workers to try to incentivize them to continue taking their medication. The problem is that if they skip more than 7 pills in a row, the whole treatment is ineffective. So now, again, how can we help with AI? So what we've done is basically use the historic data of what they have observed with patients to be able to predict early on, maybe after only several missed doses, who are the most likely patients to actually miss more doses and really stop their treatment. And then use this predictive model, again, to inform interventions and dispatch health workers to the most effective areas. So these are some of the few examples of things we have done, but overall, I guess my excitement is about using AI to make a real impact in the world, working with real organizations and real data, and finding where can we help. But at the same time, it's a two-way street. As a researcher, as a computer scientist in a university, I also want to somehow improve my science, and my science is computer science, right? And so what I have found that actually working on these problems has brought challenges that we nowadays don't know how to solve in AI. So it has also pushed us to develop new models, new methods that before were just not at our, in our research agenda. And so hopefully today we're going to identify more problems that we can try to address and bring more computational techniques.
Thank you, Bistra.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm Matt Mulrennan. I'm the director of the Ocean Initiative. This is a picture of me without a beard and I guess a man bun. So we threw this slide together 14 minutes before this presentation. So I had the pleasure of being here earlier all day, actually, designing out solutions to microplastics, actually. And we actually won the best pitch earlier. So yeah, thank you. It wasn't a competition, actually. So they're all laughing in the back because I made it a competition. So we actually we run prizes, okay? I'm very competitive. We at XPRIZE run large-scale prizes, trying to incentivize solutions to the world's grand challenges. And so we're involved with artificial intelligence because we have an AI XPRIZE. IBM Watson sponsors our AI XPRIZE. And actually, Bistra is actually one of our judges. So if you have any questions about the teams, take them to her, not me. I'm not an expert on artificial intelligence. I like the oceans. So I get a cool job because I get to see all of these emerging technologies and how they apply to solving ocean grand challenges. That's my background. I'm a marine scientist. So at XPRIZE, we're best known for incentivizing the first private space flight. We're a nonprofit foundation. We give away, like I said, millions of dollars to try and incentivize the crowd to solve this problem. We're best known for putting up a $10 million prize to incentivize Spaceship One to get up there and create private space. So before 2004, private space industry didn't exist. Now all of you know SpaceX and all these other great organizations crushing the private space game. But before that time, FAA did not let you launch your own rocket into outer space. Okay, there were rules against it, right? Now it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. here in LA and around the world. So we try to do the same thing on all of these other grand challenges, right? So we have an AI XPRIZE, which is actually open-ended in terms of we're challenging the world's experts in artificial intelligence to use it to solve a problem. Because we have that picture of the world, that vision of the world. We take that Star Trek vision of the world, where we've solved all the world's problems with technology, okay? We're just out there explorers, and we're enjoying life, right? So we use our prizes through global learning. This learning-based software that we've deployed in Tanzania. That's gonna come to an end really soon. Adult Literacy XPRIZE, which is about apps to teach adults how to read, write, and do arithmetic. Like I said, artificial intelligence, we've done 3 ocean-based XPRIZes. So the cool thing about, the bad thing about the ocean is we have a lot of problems facing the ocean, right? So we've done more ocean XPRIZes than anything else. We've done oil spill cleanup technologies, ocean pH sensors to better understand ocean acidification, which is actually my background. We have our current one, which is Ocean Discovery XPRIZE. $7 million will be awarded in the end of May. Stay tuned for that. This is autonomous vehicles that can explore the deep sea and come back with information. So to map the entire sea floor to a high resolution, we have better maps of the moon and Mars than we do of our own sea floor. So we're trying to change that. And we're actually trying to launch more ocean-based XPRIZes. That's my job, design and try to fundraise for what's next. So we're really passionate about coral reefs. We're losing coral reefs dramatically. We could be the last generation to have healthy coral reefs. That's not an understatement. They're disappearing fast, okay? We're gonna lose 90 to possibly 99% of coral reefs by 2050 and beyond. And if climate projections continue, they're one of the most sensitive ecosystems. And they're also incredibly important. So we have a prize right now we're organizing, trying to make it the biggest environmental prize in history, trying to launch around coral restoration. So how do we bring corals back? So there's a lot of applications. I actually ran a small prize through XPRIZE on using data to develop apps. So we actually did a lot of big data stuff. There's a lot of ocean data being collected right now. Not a lot of it is being used. It's publicly available. Doesn't mean it's easily accessible, but it's publicly available, and we can use it to create new products, new services. So we use that prize, developed several apps, 7 winning apps. Actually, we're in fishing, exploration, conservation, education, public safety. There's a lot that you can do, and some of them are really just fun and cool. So using your phone, augmented reality to explore the sea floor with your phone. If you could walk up to the ocean, you see mostly blue and black. But the ocean is dynamic. It has underwater canyons and otherwise. Why don't we have an app, just like that star app, if you remember this? You can see the constellations, a lot of nodding heads. What if we have the same thing for the oceans? You can see all those underwater canyons. So a team actually developed a prototype for that. So those are the kind of things I'm passionate about. Big data exists for oceans in a big way, and you can use it to solve all sorts of interesting problems. So as was being talked about, enforcement is a huge issue on the open seas, okay? And understanding where illegal fishing is actually happening is a big use of artificial intelligence right now to understand where all the world's ships are and are they fishing illegally in certain zones. It's a huge issue. It's both an environmental injustice issue as well as an environmental, just overall conservation issue. And we can actually use satellites technology as well as artificial intelligence to actually combat that with what's called the Global Fishing Watch, through where I used to work, Oceana helped create. So there's a lot of applications for artificial intelligence with the oceans. For corals, for using machine learning to visualize whether something is what you say it is in visual data. There are petabytes of data famously sitting underneath academics' desks as footrests. And they haven't gone through it because they haven't had the computational power as well as the tools to mow through all of this information. So you can use that to make all sorts of cool discoveries that have already happened, as well as to better understand the marine environment, how it's changing, and how we can better protect it. So there's a lot of cool stuff we can do because there's so much ocean information being collected. NOAA, if you don't know NOAA, it's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It's like the NASA for the ocean. It predicts your weather, your hurricanes, everything else. They collect 20 terabytes of data a day, and very little of it is actually being tapped and being used. So if any of you are interested in ocean data or how to apply artificial intelligence to solve problems facing the ocean, that's what I'm here to talk about. So thank you guys so much for having me tonight, and I'd love to talk more about XPRIZE. We have a bunch of cool stuff going on, xprize.org, to find out about it. I'm just your oceans guy, so if it's an ocean question, I'll answer that. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Matt.
Where's the clicker?
Can we have the clicker at the front, please?
Ah, thank you. All right. And I'm setting my timer. So while he's doing that, my name's Andy Lipkis. I'm here from Tree People. What am I doing? What are you pointing at? Oh, standing on the wire? Thanks. Warning. Some of what I'm going to talk about is may be triggering. Buckle your seatbelt. And yes, laugh, but it could be scary because I'm going to bring what we have been doing that's very heady into now. Great. Why I'm doing this is because, well, let me tell you Tree People's mission, and then maybe everything will unfold. Our mission is to inspire, engage, and support the people of Greater LA, taking personal responsibility for this ecosystem and supporting them participating in making it safe, healthy, fun, resilient, and sustainable, and to share our process as rapidly as possible with other cities around the world so they can also respond. So that's bureaucraties. Notice I didn't mention trees. We are about, and we've learned over the 49 years that I've been doing this since I started when I was 15, that none of us, no agency can fix the problems that we're facing now. And they have spiraled to the extent where one of the presenters today had you imagine being in this room and a 7.0 earthquake happened now. And what are you going to do? And how many of us know how to save each other's lives, let alone get out of the building? And what about your dogs, your parents, your family left at home that you can't get to? And have you prepared for that? The theme tonight, what I want you to begin to reboot, is the notion that the first responders are going to save us. They're not. However, this group, and it is such a pleasure and an honor to be with you because this group is in another world. We are the pre-responders. Pre-responders, thank you, yes. Think about that. In today's world, and I'm going to lay it out very quickly, first responders are way too late. So I was asked to speak to a group of 120 state leaders 18 months ago when the head of all emergency services for the state of California gathered them together and said, ladies and gentlemen, the reason why you're here today is because the infrastructure that we built in this state to protect public health and safety and the economy, that infrastructure was built for a different climate than we now have. The state of California can no longer protect the people. That's all I have to say. That's why you're here. This is fucking real, guys. The following week we had Houston. The week after that, Florida. The week after that, Louisiana. And then swung over here. By the way, those were three hurricanes and then 4 concurrent hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico, never seen before. In every case, no public agency was available to save anybody. It came down to neighbor and whether people had conversations, whether people had prepared. And then extreme climate swung to California. Santa Rosa, 2 in the morning, a fire starts. If people hadn't met with their neighbors and had a conversation, can I break your window if you don't respond to a knock at the door or the ring of your doorbell? And if you haven't had that conversation and you don't know there's a loaded gun at the other side, you're not going to rescue that person. And you may lose your life waiting, and they may lose their life. That's exactly what happened in Santa Rosa, and then a month later here in Ventura. This has been happening in Australia for 15 years, and they have had to figure out how to flip it and enable their communities to respond and help each other. The good news is we can do it. So the context of this and why you are so important is that we can use AI with available data now to fuse it in a way that we can deliver rescue information to every single individual with a cell phone to enable them to be the rescuer. Ahead of time, ideally, and in the moment. I've got an app on my phone where they've done this in Australia. You mark where you are on the map and anyone you care about in the state of Victoria, where Melbourne is. And the minute there's a dispatch of a fire, you're notified. I downloaded it on my app. Because, oh, by the way, we brought the head of emergency management Victoria to Los Angeles last week to hold emergency meetings in Malibu, Calabasas for 100 elected officials and agency heads here to brief them about this so they could start taking action. But they don't have you. They need you. We have, this group uniquely has the ability to accelerate this and hopefully win an XPRIZE for emergency management. But I downloaded that app and put my sister-in-law's farm on it, and 20 minutes later, I got a notification that there was a fire within 2 miles of her farm, and she may be at risk. I was able to text her, and she said, "You didn't need to text me. I have got the app. All of our neighbors have the app. We are ready for this." In the middle of the night. So I just wiped out my time, but my purpose tonight is to convince you of the power of crowdsourcing. So I'm going to fly through this quickly. This is Martin Luther King Boulevard, Junior Boulevard, right through the middle of LA. This, click, are you responding? It's not, okay. So this was 1992, and we crowdsourced 3,000 volunteers who worked, actually hundreds of volunteers, mobilized all the neighbors, and 3,000 people joined, 1,000 people had been trained in advance, planted all 7 miles in 3 hours. That's a project that the mayor of LA, Bradley, said would take 10 years and $10 million to do. And we did it in a day, crowdsourcing people. That's the person who actually organized it, Eudora Russell, a retired school teacher who had the dream. I won't talk about the space shuttle cutting some of the trees down. So Tree People plants trees, but we mobilize masses of volunteers. So we are in a chronic climate emergency. Flooding, fire, heat, drought. And humans have the best ability to crowdsource new infrastructure, which is humans and community is the infrastructure, and then we can deploy actually physical infrastructure. So in the disaster relief, the first and second flood disaster ever handled by the community, crowdsourced by the community, is something we did in 1978 and then again in 1980. In 1980, we had the second back-to-back 100-year flood in Los Angeles. I know a lot of you weren't born yet, but people called for help. They called the fire department and they were told, "Sorry, we've got nothing for you." A city councilman asked us if we could use our volunteers to save homes, and there was no internet, there was no cell phones, but we crowdsourced through the media, brought 3,000 volunteers together, saved 1,200 homes in 10 days. Ham radio operators, off-road vehicles, we built a massive army that we could dispatch and deploy. Imagine what's possible with AI backing us and apps. In Australia, they had a drought for 12 years that nearly took out the country. The government said, "We're out of water, but it's raining." And by the way, LA is the very same thing. We receive half our water in rainfall every year. You were talking about that, right? But we import 90%. We throw away all of our water, so we're perpetually out of water here and in a perpetual drought, and we think we're in a desert, but we're not. What they did in Australia was give people the incentives, the tools to plan, to figure out their roof space, figure out how much water they could capture in the few storms they were getting, and they gave them tanks. 40% of the homes in the city of Melbourne, which is the same 4 million people size that we have, installed tanks. They did this around the country and saved themselves. We've built a pilot in LA. These tanks, these are all people right here in LA, and every one of those we took an extra step. They are remote controlled and remotely censored. So our Department of Water and Power, our flood control agency, and our water quality agency can all see all the water and all have control of the water. So with AI, we can manage the entire watershed and have water for firefighting, for saving lives. We need to take this to the streets. You have the ability. So I just want to say as we get started, this is not an exercise. By the way, crowdsourcing, this is 5,000 volunteers running on the Marina Freeway when we shut it down to show what people could do. They actually ran, and a lot of them stopped along the way and planted trees and landscaped it. We can do this. Want you to think about humanity. Instead of a massive horde of locusts on the planet that are consumers, this group of people uniquely has the ability to create apps to enable every one of the 7 billion people on the planet to transform from consumer to regenerator healer. We have to do it fast. Oh, I left out, no, I'll just do it in the panel. Got some really good facts about now. Actually, let me just give you these that are, I'm going to end with the urgency now. So we talked about heat 100 years out, at the end of the century, 80 years out. This is the uncomfortable part. Los Angeles is the first city in the United States to have people die of severe heat during winter. This is now. The US Centers for Disease Control said more Americans die every year of severe heat than all other natural disasters combined. Problem is, people aren't getting the data. And right now, the data on mortality from heat is blocked for 3 years before it's released. We know people died last summer. We know anecdotally, a male deliverer, a male woman, a woman, whatever, died in her mail truck in the valley. It was probably dozens, if not hundreds of people who died during that heat wave. Here's the environmental justice piece of this, and it goes to the map that you showed. If you are Latino in Los Angeles today, you are 46% more likely to die on the 5th day of a heat wave than someone who looks like me. If you're African American, you are 48% more likely to die. Why is that? Because parts of Los Angeles have 23 to 26% tree canopy cover. Other parts of Los Angeles, like South LA, East LA, Northeast San Fernando Valley, have under 6%. In Australia, they started losing hundreds of people in heat waves. Melbourne, just like LA, used the science and realized they needed to establish 40% tree canopy cover over that city to lower peak temperatures by 7 to 10 degrees, enough to save lives. We can do that here. We have the data now to be able to give it to everybody to see if they're at risk or not, to save existing trees or plant their protective canopy, and to feed them the money, the resources to do that. Thank you.
Everyone, Andy. Thank you. My microphone just died. Okay. Wow. I think we're going to share it in discussion, if that's okay. Or I might just swap this with you. Brilliant. Just like that. Okay, great. Fantastic. So we've heard a little bit about the ocean. We've heard about the microclimate. We've heard about some of the more sort of local geographic issues in LA. We've heard about applications of AI in conservation. I'm sure you've got a lot of questions. Please have them ready. I'm going to have a microphone over there. Justin, put your hand up. Is going to look after you and prepare you. And just before we do that, I had a couple of questions really to sort of warm us up on what it is that we're preparing ourselves for. So my most important question, of course, we've heard a lot about your work, is starting with you, Matt. And then, of course, I'll sort of like move across the panel, is what were your favorite shoes when you were a kid?
What were my favorite shoes? I had a couple pairs of Nikes, and I destroyed them. I had some really dorky like Kivas, you know, like the water shoes, and I can't even explain what my current fiance calls them, but they're not good. They're not attractive shoes to anybody of the opposite sex, or anybody in general. So I ended up getting rid of my Kivas like just recently. All right, they were called "Don't Fuck Me" shoes. That's what they were called. So Kivas had to go. So.
I hate to say, I don't think I have a great answer to this question. I think maybe Adidas. I'm not sure. Back when they were hip.
I think I had some hand-me-downs.
Flip-flops.
I actually don't remember. I have too many things in my head. This stuff is already replaced by other things.
How about a little bit of data on those shoes? Just a joke.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, now that you know what our favorite shoes were when we were younger, I've got kind of like a little bit of a sense of what you're doing, and I'm fascinated with this sort of crowdocratic mobilization of people. And I think that, you know, one of the larger sort of, you know, annual reports has suggested that we've got 12 years to do all of this in. If we're going on your sort of scale of preventative measures, if we had 5 years or if we had 2 years to do all of this, panel, do you think that we can do it? If yes, how? And if no, why not?
I mean, that's a great question on deadlines. I think everyone operates with deadlines, right? And when you talk about climate change, it's always been 2050, you know, it's now, right? But yeah, we need to set, and I love that young people are hitting the streets now so hard and taking this so seriously. There's a totally huge shift in public perception on climate change within the last 5 years. And it's heartening to see how much I think this will change with exponential technologies like AI. I mean, things can be created so fast now that I think that you look at a lot of the tools to solve climate change, and a lot of them are just scaling up right now. The cost of solar has dropped dramatically. It is now going to be, it is now on price parity in most places, going to be much cheaper than fossil fuels. The technologies beat fuels. They crush them because the technologies can improve, okay, and they go down in costs. So we're going to change energy sources dramatically fast. I think it's going to happen even a lot faster than most people expect. And we won't be talking about, you know, coal and natural gas as much. So I think that there are ways that artificial intelligence is going to help us get even better at developing solutions faster. And I've heard, you know, anecdotes of, you know, what people project AI is going to be like, okay? And we have the creative capacity to put lights in the sky, satellites and otherwise. And chimps, you know, are really similar species, 98% of the same DNA, almost similar in intelligence. And AI may look at us like ants. And it's kind of hard to even perceive that kind of change, okay? That we're going to have these powerful tools, okay? And the question is, what do we do with it? So I think that we can solve climate change with exponential technologies, and already on the trends and the public pressure that we have going right now. So 5 years, we could definitely do a huge dent on climate change, but we're gonna have to continue to adapt to it the rest of our lifetime. So a lot of challenges.
So this is, so 5 years, I mean, some of what we've seen is it's hard to remain optimistic, right? Considering, you know, the political climate, but I'm a professor, so I have to be optimistic because the young people have to be optimistic, and they're very inspiring. And I think one of the challenges is our political institutions have not moved as fast as these scalable technologies. And so I think that we need to start to think about what can these technologies do for us with what we have now. So let me just give you one example, and then I'll pass the mic off. Here in California, what do we do when we want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions? Like, what is our go-to option? Build more solar, right? That's what we do. We build more solar panels, and that's what everybody wants us to do more of, which is fantastic. Except yesterday and the day before yesterday, we curtailed record amounts of solar. We actually have so much solar built in this state, we can't use it all. And that's a terrible problem to have. So what is the solution to that problem? Batteries. We don't have batteries available that are scalable and economical. So one of the things that I'm really excited about is using all of you as batteries. So when solar is available, you should be washing your dishes, you should be cleaning your clothes, you should be drying your clothes. That's something called demand response. And right now, that's a technological problem. How do we get our devices to be timed when the solar is available? Then you don't need batteries. You don't need all those upstream implications. Those are a technology that we have now. We have you. We have AI. Our devices could be run on that, but we don't have the infrastructure right now to do that and to incentivize that. So I think those are the conversations we need to start having. Let's stop waiting for batteries, and let's all get you to wash your dishes during the middle of the day when we have so much hydro and so much solar available. Let's utilize the resources that we have rather than say we need more and we need more and we need more and we need more. Because unfortunately, solar panels are also resource intensive. So we have to do better with what we have now, and we have these technologies now. So I think we really have to think about how to optimize those systems, and you guys have the networks and the frameworks to do that type of thing.
Bistra.
So 5 years, that's a tight deadline. I don't know. I don't know if much is possible in 5 years, but maybe if we have a little longer, yes. But I think, so obviously I believe in technology a lot, but technology alone is not going to be the solution. It has to be humans and technology. And so I believe a big part of the solution would be to really scale up in terms of human involvement, making every person that we know a global citizen, a person who cares about the future of our planet, about taking responsibility about their personal decisions, but also in terms of like what people around them are doing or what they can do in their own job, right? So one big excitement for me is, and you know, one of my imperatives as a professor at USC is to try to educate as many as our young people in undergraduate and graduate school about what it means to be a global citizen. So even if you're doing computer science, you should know about the environmental problems. You should be thinking about like, how can I use the skills that I'm learning in my database class or in my algorithms class to think about making impact in the world around me, right? And so I feel this kind of creation of human responsibility is going to really be an important piece of making this happen, and getting citizens to contribute to this as well. Obviously, it's very important.
So people tend not to believe that they make a difference. We believe that if we change, it's a drop in the bucket. It's not true. Every one of us makes a huge difference. But we don't believe it, we don't get feedback. Any system to be whole and healthy needs feedback. The people of LA were facing a drought in the 70s, and one of the best education programs ever happened when the water agencies created a community water use thermometer and gave it to every weather forecaster at every television, radio station, and the newspaper. The entire community got to see a water use thermometer for Greater Los Angeles. And then they were told, shut off the tap while you're brushing your teeth. Take a shorter shower. If it's yellow, let it mellow. People are willing to give it a try. But without feedback that you've made a difference, you don't stay in the game. AI gives us the ability to give instant feedback. That thermometer, what happened was people went, oh, I'll give it a try. But I know I'm just a drop in the bucket, just shutting off the tap while brushing my teeth. Well, guess what? As people tried it, that water use thermometer reported back to the public began to drop. And people got that, oh my God, it's moving. I made a difference. That little drop in the bucket times 10 million people in LA County. Oh, it took like 3.5, 4 weeks for us to drop our water use 30% to hit the goal that we needed to make it through the drought. The behavior change that happened because of that locked in. Several signals were given. First of all, government, business like to say people won't change. People won't change lifestyles. That's bullshit. People will with incentives. Well, what happened was when people did that radical shift of saving water and saving our city, they also sent a signal to politicians saying, we're willing to change. And the politicians said, oh, well, we want to be good guys. We want to back you up. So what they did is pay for people $100 per toilet to swap their toilets from 7 gallons per flush to 1.5 gallons per flush. The result of that was Los Angeles uses less water today than we did 30 years ago, and we have 1 million more people. So we locked in with technology. So let's fast forward. That technology today, used right, can support us rapidly changing, feeding people feedback, feeding people incentives. An example of without the apps, without the artificial intelligence, everyone knows people in LA love their lawns. And people would not remove them when they were offered $1 per square foot to remove them. They didn't do anything when they were offered $2 per square foot. When Department of Water and Power offered $3 per square foot, everybody started doing it. And the Department of Water and Power and the Metropolitan Water District pumped out $500 million worth of incentives in 6 months to people across LA who ripped out their lawns. Now the problem was they didn't have artificial intelligence to guide their actions, what to replace it with. And they wound up putting in gravel because that was offered by the company who did it easily. But with AI, you can walk into your yard if you develop this app, and so it can tell you what trees to plant to cool your property instead of heating it up, which is what happened when people put down the gravel. You could click on it and hear the bird sounds that you could be bringing to hear in your neighborhood. You can be told, by the way, there's 23 different climate zones in Los Angeles, and many species of trees won't cross it without dying or getting a fungus. Nobody in a nursery can tell you that, but AI can tell you. Give you your 3D nursery of viable plants for your home and let you plant them on a 3D model using an enhancement of Google Earth and see in AI, with AI support, maybe VR, walk through the forest that you've created on your home, and then plan that, push a button, and receive your incentives to install it, mark it on the map that you've done it, and start receiving incentives for keeping it alive. Because you're saving energy, you're saving lives, you're saving the system with the economics. We can do this, guys and women.
I like the answers that you've all given. Many people say that artificial intelligence is going to take over humanity. Of course, that may or may not be the case. Who's to say that that is a reality? But I think in the short term, where a number of us are still trying to understand the extent of the application of AI, let alone what its full length of capability will be, not just in terms of the neural networks, but the advancement of machine learning or the interoperability between, say, blockchain and quantum computing, we're looking at huge scales and massive shifts in such short periods of time. Do you have any thoughts on that? You're giggling.
Yeah, I think that's like always the elephant in the room during any AI discussion. But remember, right? We joke around at XPRIZE a lot. Like we can kind of do AI. We can't even do AV right now. So it's like we're still at this stage where we shouldn't be afraid of these technologies. I get to talk to some experts in this field, and I'm not an expert on artificial intelligence. I'm optimistic that there's going to be a stage where we are creating solutions to some of our most horrible diseases. We're going to be thinking up solutions to environmental problems that we just don't even have the brain power, computational power to constantly process. And climate change energy problems are big data problems. We're going to have these tools that are 1,000 times more powerful than every brain on the planet put together, running all the time, that don't have to eat or sleep or do anything other than solve problems. That opportunity is massive, right? So I think that there's the amount of things that we will create over the next 50 years is unbelievable. I can't even imagine what we can't create with these tools because I'm stupid and I'm just one human with a dumb human brain. But thinking to the future, it's going to be hard to imagine what you can't create with these tools. Like to think it up, to turn it into a physical, actual outcome almost immediately. That's scary for a lot of people as well. So I asked an AI expert this. I go to like a lot of AI ethics talks and stuff like that, and it always comes down to like humans, you know? So I asked this AI expert that's trying to program AI with the best human emotions, you know, empathy and compassion, love. And ultimately I was like, yeah, that's awesome that you're doing that, you know? But do you trust people? And he said, don't ask me that. So, I mean, the bottom line is we're putting a lot in the development of this technology. We're not putting a lot of money into security. We're not doing a lot of thinking about what happens, right? We put 95% of it into development because we run on a quarterly cycle to get returns on investments. That's how our economy, you know, runs. But we're putting very little money into the security of AI. And I think we should be putting a lot more, quite frankly. Even though I work at XPRIZE, we're doing an AI XPRIZE, we have a lot of powerful thinkers in the space who are very optimistic that it can solve problems. We still should be doing more. But reminder, when we blew up an atomic bomb for the first time, nobody knew if it was gonna light the entire atmosphere on fire. So we just did that. So we've done these things before, we've created tools and we're still here. And there's a 1 in 1,000 chance we kill ourselves with nuclear weapons every year, and we're still here. So I'm not that afraid of AI. I'm actually thinking it's gonna make me live longer and do cooler stuff, explore the ocean. I don't know. I'm pretty optimistic about AI.
So we can talk a lot about privacy, we can go down the science fiction rabbit hole, but if I put on my optimistic hat, I think there's just huge opportunities at this point for us as humans to collaborate and to use these as tools that can leverage more creative solutions. So one of the examples that I really like is, because I come from a mechanical engineering background, is, you know, if you want to design, say, a race car to go around a track really, really fast, what did we do? We made it low, and we made materials where air could flow very fluidly over the track to make it go fast. We've really optimized that system over time. You give that same design challenge to artificial intelligence, and what does it come up with? Well, it comes up with a car that looks very different. It's not symmetrical. Because our cars only take, I'm not a car person, but maybe it takes only right-hand turns. So you actually don't want that car to be symmetrical. And so throughout the decades, nobody ever thought of that the car only has to turn in one direction. But because artificial intelligence is coming at this from an entirely different set of design principles, it comes up with a solution that is creative, or maybe not creative isn't the word, but it comes up with something that's different than what we thought of. And so I think there's a lot of really interesting opportunities that type of collaboration between humans and algorithms can lend us even at this time.
So, yeah, I guess as being an AI person, this question comes up over and over again. And for me, there's so many technologies that can either help or hurt. That's true not only for AI, it's true for all sorts of other things. And, you know, materials or in health, different inventions. But so it's really up to us to focus on getting the benefits and not the negatives, right? So that's why I am so excited to promote and see more and more people really focusing on how can we harness AI for social good. And I think that's going to be the solution of really incentivizing and promoting and making sure people understand that that's the right direction to focus on. On the other hand, I also believe that there should be some concerted effort of also enforcing some regulation and some security, and also as more and more AI systems are being deployed, making sure of fairness as well, right? As decisions are getting automated with AI systems, we want them to make sure that the decisions they're making are not propagating existing biases or creating new biases. The optimistic thing is that people are already thinking very hard about this. And it's not only researchers, but also companies. And I have trust in human responsibility that we're going to get this right. So that's my stand, optimism.
Anything to add there?
Yeah, I'll go to the other end of the spectrum.
Do it.
Which is just, there was a group while you guys were doing your focus groups, there was a little focus group on talking about the Intuinet and how that mimics the internet, but it's been here for a very long time, supported by tree roots and fungus, and now proven that it's operating and that we're all plugged into it. We all have an account on the Intuinet. We have intuition. The planet communicates to us. We doubt it. We don't know how to listen to it, but we need to learn. We all have a scanner on board that's asking the question, where am I needed and how can I help? It's working in every one of us. We've lost the language for that, believing that the market gives us what we need to live, but the earth does. And anytime it hits your frequency, and we all share a broadband frequency of care for humanity and the earth and critters, and also we all are uniquely tuned, but when something hits your frequency, it converts to a drip or a shot of adrenaline to wake you up. Problem is we've lost the language for that. All of us are getting pinged, and day to day, different times of the day, we're getting drops, drips, or shots of adrenaline, and we don't understand why we're being stressed. The Intuinet is that feature, the earth is calling. And so whatever happens with our ability to do this incredible work via the internet, we can default and hopefully let the internet train us to pay attention to the Intuinet, so we're not run by the potential of some other person or country corrupting that. And we've learned to cooperate, we've learned to trust each other, and we've learned to work fast. And we've learned and we know that we're healers.
Wow. Woo. Respect. I think we're ready for questions. Over there. If we can have one of these microphones, could you queue up? That'd be awesome. If you've got any questions, please queue up. And if there is a specific panelist that you'd like to ask the question to, please use their name. And please keep it short so we can get more people's questions in. Go ahead. Please introduce your name, your question, and if there is someone specific that you'd like to ask.
Yes, my name is Jennifer Arrington, and my question was about how we would work together as global citizens, knowing that we've got this clash of civilizations now because of the internet and all our connectivity. I was interested how you would take this AI technology that you're using to, let's say, track species or map the ocean floors and make sure that that is incentivized in a way that people help the environment and not just use it for like corporate gain, or because not everyone shares our same values. I mean, you've got Western civilization and Islamic civilization. You've got all these competing world powers, and like, how could we work with groups across the world to provide those incentives?
Thank you. Anyone specific? Pick one. Do it.
Matt and
Boom. Bistra.
Bistra. Thank you.
You know, I think that I had the opportunity to go to the UN, you know, and give a talk, not like on the main floor, like in the side room, but I say I gave a talk at the UN. And, you know, you're in the hall, the Great Hall of Humanity, and you just, like, you realize, like, there's a lot of cooperation happening. It's really easy to see the negative. I think that our entire world right now is the negative. But there's so much international cooperation on such a multitude of issues. I think that environmental issues are the one thing that'll bring everyone together, to be honest. It is the biggest social, environmental, civil, it's all combined. It's causing the biggest demonstrations in history. It is going to cause the biggest movement in democracies around the world. I think that AI will just, once we unleash it on this problem, it'll help with that with solving that problem. The issue I think you're getting at is control and sovereign states and nationalism seemingly on the rise, but the long-term trends, not really. Like, let's be real. I don't think a lot of this is going to withstand time. If you look at polling data of the next generations, they're the best educated. They're just good people. Like, they want to volunteer more. They want to ride public transportation. 9 out of 10 will switch a brand because they're more environmentally focused. So there's a lot of movement there that I think but the control issue, I don't have an answer to that. Right now, if a country controls AI or a small group of individuals that wants to do a lot of harm, they might be able to, right? So. Yeah. She's saying you could create a model that's more inclusive economically around the world, and I think they're absolutely right. That's a tech transfer issue as much as it is the control issue. But I think that more and more people have access to smartphones. So we've never even had the ability to transfer money to other humans, ever. So there's certain things that is changing. So the incentives, like you're saying, to do good things for that's a big movement, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way I interpreted the question was like, what happens when like different states have different priorities and so on, and how people can misuse technology? Is that?
Yeah, what happens to the poacher, not the poacher, but you have the 5 park rangers, and you give them better tracking. How could we better coordinate with like the municipalities and stuff to
Right.
arm them so that they don't get killed?
Yeah.
To stop the poachers,
Yeah. So generally, like, I guess globally, I feel a lot of the solutions, AI, other technology-based solutions, have to be deployed with a very good understanding of the ecosystem of human society that they're entering, and trying to engage all the stakeholders, right? For example, in the poaching setting, a lot of our partners in the field, in the protected areas, they're not only having the rangers going and patrolling in these areas, but they're actually always working with communities, with the nearby communities, and creating, for example, alternative livelihoods for them. I mean, a lot of the poachers essentially are local villagers that are so strapped for cash that that's their way of making a living, right? And so these systems are always somehow trying to be interfaced with creating alternative livelihoods. For example, we work in a protected area in Cambodia, and in that area they're creating actually jobs for the local villagers to be community rangers, right? So sometimes like people that used to be poachers are now working as community rangers, right? And that's just creating a way of becoming part of the solution and not being washed out.
Hi, so I work in the advertising industry, so I see practical applications to AI all the time. I don't see it as like a future thing. I see it as something that's been happening already in my field. So my concern is I don't consider governments or even individuals to be the bad guys so much as companies being the bad guys. So, and in the victims of capitalist activities, the first victim tends to be the environment. So my question is, what happens when the bad guys, companies in this case, get as smart with AI as the good guys, like the people in this room? So I want to just challenge the panel with a couple specific examples related to your individual field. So with the elephant poachers, for example, what if they get equally as good with AI and GPS tracking to reverse that to know where the elephants are and the poachers aren't? What happens when microplastic polluting companies learn how to manipulate that data in a way to allow them to pollute more. When large bad companies who can fund large computational data projects take that power, or when gravel companies instead of native landscaping companies use that same that same model. So the harms I see, like, how do we prevent the harms of preventing access to that data to the bad guys and make sure it's in the hands of the good guys instead? And for example, the examples of like with big tobacco and the gun industry who use suspect data sources to draw harmful conclusions. How do we learn from that history and make sure that it's the good guys who use this technology and not just companies who will inevitably follow the profit motive to the doom of us all?
I think what's really fascinating is that, not so long ago, Cambridge Analytica took and swiped all of the data from Facebook using Ocean's data from Cambridge University's researchers and manipulated that to try and understand what it was that you as an individual in America could actually be influenced by if certain campaigns were put in front of you if you were to watch, a Facebook ad or kind of micro sort of subconscious messages. And I think that we're at that stage where, companies like that will eventually be found out by regulations like GDPR. In EU, we have a huge shift and change within the last, 12 months to convert everybody and all information and data usage to be captured and understood, and the government is now introducing methods to actually safeguard the citizen rather than the actual company or the corporate behind that. So I think that on a larger scale, of course, all of your questions are valid, and I think that we're probably going to need another 5 hours to discuss those. So I definitely recommend that we all get involved in that, because I think that as we become much more advanced in our appreciation of what AI can do, so are, if you were to call them, the baddies. But it wasn't that long ago when it was okay for companies like Coca-Cola to use drugs. It wasn't that long ago when preservatives were actually causing cancer. It wasn't that long ago when Rachel Carson wrote her book, The Silent Spring, and woke everybody up about one day spring will come and nothing will arise. So I think that there is a general dawn of realization. Anita Roddick of The Body Shop, introduced in the 1990s that this is where my product comes from, this is who has created it, and if you want to know further information, you can read it on the back of the label. Today we have companies like Patagonia that say and suggest in their business models that this is where our product is created. And by the way, don't come back and buy a new one, bring it back and we'll try and sew it up for you. So business models are shifting, and the reason why they're shifting is because demand is shifting, because you are asking, where does this product come from? Oh, why? I'm a vegan. Is this product vegan? And then you realize that actually it's using some sort of gluten that comes from an animal that you weren't expecting because that information wasn't made available to you. And so you would then lobby that against the government just as much as they're as powerful as industry is to go and lobby that in government, so are you. So the realization, to answer your question, if I may, is that we have become much more educated on what our rights are. We've become much more educated about how we're powerful. I was there in London walking the streets of Westminster when over 1 million students and children across schools had said, we're not going to school. We believe that climate change is happening, and we're not going to school because we've got something to stand for. It's not that long ago when Greta Thunberg was actually making that statement, and now she's all over the press. And I think she's been nominated a Nobel Prize. So I think that there are a number of companies that have this, opportunity, but it's not very long before we can actually uncover the reality of their situation. So of course they can use AI. You can use blockchain. What's the point of having a blockchain if you're going to continue doing exactly the same thing, but you're going to call it a private network? The whole point of a blockchain is that it's decentralized. The whole point of it is that you can have mass consensus around a subject. But I think we're sort of slowly stepping towards it. I don't know if the panel wants to add anything to that.
I guess the only thing I can say is that we're not going to stop companies from developing technology and using technology. They have the resources to hire their whole own research team And like it's not like, oh, we're gonna hide that technology from them. They can create it. So I think the solution is for the people on the good side to be faster, to be better, to be more committed, to be more of us. I think that's the solution.
Next question. Thank you. It's
Hello.
a hard act to follow.
Hi, my name is Marcia Osterling. Yeah, wow. So from listening to a panel of so much positivity and so much, so much, I guess you could say, just so motivational, and then to hear the other side and then have a question right now is just so, hold on. I guess my one thing that I would say to the person that actually just asked this question is, I think it's kind of up to us, and the reason why we're here, to decide that we want to make change for good, and that given the current circumstances of our world and the current problems, we are already fighting the bad to change things for the better and for good. So given like technology, I'd like to think optimistically in a sense, but I do agree in this, that we do need security and we do need education, not only in our own domestic world, but internationally. But my question actually is, yes, we've talked about the macro level of solving these problems on a human scale, but I kind of wanted to bring it back to what about a micro scale? What about somebody maybe in my position or somebody here in this room who actually just figured out a solution or maybe an idea or maybe a resource that they can bring from their own company or their own experience or their own life and come to you or somebody else in their network to actually solve everything that you've addressed? What are the tools exactly, and what are the first steps that you would each say for that specific person to go for or to do?
So yeah, we at XPRIZE love to encourage everybody to get involved with designing our prizes. Is a primary way we engage with the public. When you can't compete in a prize, they're open to anybody. That's what I love about them. It's even playing field. I've had middle school kids compete against the best, smartest oceanographers in the world, and they've done pretty well. But open to any participants in XPRIZes. You can always compete. Check out our website, newsletter, whatnot. You can win millions of dollars. Big foam check. Fantastic. But you can help design the prizes as well. So we're thinking up solutions on rainforest. We're thinking up a prize on meatless meats. We're thinking up prizes on coral restoration. So there's actually a community page that you can get small prizes if you help develop the prize design. And prize design is fun because it's thinking about the problem as and then you think about what are the breakthroughs needed to solve it. How do you design a prize to actually get us there? Mm-hmm. So you can go to the xprize.org website, and that's the community page is constantly updating with new prize designs. That's how we engage with the public for the most part. And then we do stuff like this, and we try to support the community of problem solvers in these kind of spaces. But I'm happy to talk to you about ways to get involved with XPRIZE outside of this.
Very quickly, I hate being self-referential here, but it's for instructive purposes. I started as a 15-year-old. I saw the world differently, the curse of seeing what people said they didn't see. And the forests were dying, and we heard about it. And we were told that only the kids were going to save it because government wasn't doing anything. A tiny group started doing something. My point is, if you don't have access, build a demonstration. As small as as big as you can, which might be 2 people, or then 10 people, and then get that demonstration that proves that it's feasible at that scale, and share it. Some reporter's going to pick it up. Somehow it's going to spread. I saw the state killing baby trees in the state nursery that I wanted to plant in National Forest, and they said, "You're a kid, you don't know what you're doing." So I called the LA Times and said, "Hey, I've got an idea," and they rescued the trees, and then they shared. Then I got them all ready, and they shared it in the Times and said, "He needs 50 cents per tree. Anyone who wants to help can." And I was 15, and no, by then I was 18. But people sent 50 cents. In 2 days, 3 weeks, we had $10,000. All I needed, I thought, was $4,000 at 50 cents. So scale. I mean, take it one at a time. Don't be daunted by it's got to change the city, the world, the neighborhood even right away. You can make it real and enroll people. And it's like climbing a mountain, one step after the next. It's not very long before you've gone a long way. Whatever your idea is, you can make it happen.
Right, and I just, before I go into anybody else's, I like to think that, and maybe I'm wrong for the people that are in this room, but the startups that are in this room have already made those steps. They've already made the prototype, maybe they've made a few prototypes, they've created applications, they have partnerships with maybe not, not so much startups that are still waiting for that moment of funding, right? Because that's the reality of it, is the network of money and the network of partnerships, and are really people at the end of the day able to take off their title and take off their jacket to work together to actually enable these solutions on a large scale. So I guess when I mean tools, what tools would you
I
give?
would really suggest
And this is not even
that tomorrow, when it's my birthday, you should come and
Happy
celebrate
birthday.
with me, thank you, in the Techstars Startup Challenge for 3 days. And I suggest you put your time where your mouth is and come and join us for 3 days, and come and collect whoever it is in the audience is also going to be there. And come and join us and put that solution to the test of the community that's going to be there. And you'll get tools, you'll get people, and you'll get some inspiration.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Right, I wanted to round up, and I know that we want to continue the conversation, but I'm also aware that you've come to network and have a chat with everybody, and you've got your personal sort of community that you've got here, so please take advantage of that. I'm going to ask the panel to wrap up and give us a few thoughts, maybe in about 2 minutes each. Popcorn.
Yeah, I think, thank you guys so much for having me, AI LA. This was really cool. It's always inspiring to see so many people wanting to solve environmental problems, and that's what gives me a lot of optimism for this whole field. And I want to say, to the vein of, it's easy to get dark, and I find that the people who get dark are the people that are doing literally nothing, and they do the least to try and solve these problems. The best way I've gotten optimistic is to take action, and in that vein, the spirit of collaboration, I'm going to be planting trees with tree people on Saturday, I think at Topanga. So yeah, we need to plant 1 trillion trees or something to solve climate change. So let's just do something. Get outside, have fun, enjoy the environment. There's gonna be some kind of environment for the rest of your lifetime. It'll be there. It's gonna change, it's gonna be weird. But I would say when you're getting a little down, you see all the news, do something. Do anything, try to take action. That action just begets more and more and more action. It's influenced my entire life, my entire career, because I just took actions to try and save the environment. So that's what I'm gonna recommend. Use the tools that are super great. Artificial intelligence and otherwise is just another way to solve problems. It's another way to create a product, another way to create a business opportunity. Use it. It's gonna be a really interesting time that we're heading into. And I really think that we can solve some big challenges with these tools. So I'll end on that. Thanks.
Yeah, and just to kind of follow up, it's easy to think about how these technologies can be used for nefarious purposes, obviously. But as individuals, we also have a platform that we've never had before. So to be a billionaire in, if you look at the top companies of the past, they were GE, they were Standard Oil, they were the big energy companies. Now, if you look at the companies that are in the top economic, you have Alpha, which is, you have the Googles, you have Amazon, you have these big tech companies that were created almost overnight. In 10 years, those companies might look completely different. These people's were where you were sitting to billionaires within a very, very short period of time. Mark Zuckerberg was in college when I was in college. I was in Boston when he created Facebook. So we have a platform. Governments have been toppled because of social media. So yes, there can be this technology that's used for nefarious purposes, but there's also a whole nother level of accountability and transparency. We live in an age where a single Yelp review can put somebody under, right? So there is a lot of potential for fast, scalable action, and I think we have to keep that in the back of our mind.
Well, it's been a great pleasure to hear everybody's questions and to be here. And I guess my final thoughts are, I hope all of you stay as excited and as engaged in this area as possible. And my encouragement is that spread the word. Talk to your friends, tell them about both the environmental problems as well as the technological potential, and get more people involved. Share your ideas, and also try to keep whatever we generate as ideas or software open source. Like that's, I guess, the one thing that didn't come up that I wanted just to raise. Let's try to democratize our knowledge as much as possible. Share data, share techniques, so that other people can build on it. This way, we are going to really triple the outcome that we can if we can just build on each other's ideas very easily, and that will happen only if we share.
This is not an exercise. You're here for a reason. You have incredible intelligence and power. Something brought you here. Keep listening, keep responding. The fastest way to get to solutions is tell the truth and get feedback, so you can learn from mistakes as quick as possible and recycle and try again, and each step moves us further. You never fail. Be open to that feedback that one didn't work, and try again quickly. We can do this. We will do this.
What an inspiring panel. Thank you, folks. Be curious, get creative, and join me for my birthday tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. It's been a very interesting day. I think I'm on like 3 hours of sleep, but it worked.
You look brilliant for 3 hours, by the way. I don't know how you pull it off.
Thank you. Also I usually am a well-shaved man, but yeah, you see me this way. Either way, thank you so much for your wisdom, your guidance, and hopefully everyone understands, I don't get the reverb, understands our mission, right? What's the next step? It's not exercise. We are here to actually do something, right? And thank you all for coming out. There is a reason why you're here. There's a reason why we're having this conversation, because next step is tomorrow morning when we wake up with a fresh head, with these new thoughts, and we share to the world what we witnessed today, what we heard today, and we can only hope for the best. So thank you so much. You have about 30 more minutes of just hanging out, meeting everyone. Seriously, please, this is our family. We want to spread this, right? So please meet each other, get home safe, and we'll see you at the next one. So thank you all for your time.